Hey everybody, KC here. So last week I did a FaceTime in which I talked about a survey which indicated there's a lot of people would miss the birth of a child or a funeral or a wedding if it meant missing a Super Bowl in which their team happened to be playing. I questioned their priorities a little bit, and I pointed to Sandy Koufax as being an example of somebody who had priorities right as far as I was concerned. So yesterday I posted here an email from a guy who basically questioned my priorities and Sandy Koufax's. You can question mine all you want. I'm not sure about questioning Sandy Koufax's. And what he wrote was that Koufax's decision was, and I quote, perhaps the most heinous display of narcissism in the annals of professional sports. It was all about me. Forget about my teammates, Dodger fans, and the people who are paying me. Well, I frankly just didn't even know how to respond to that, except to say that, well, clearly your values and your priorities are different than mine. The good news is there were MNB readers who did know how to respond to him. And I'm going to read one of the responses, but I got a bunch of them along the same lines. Here it is. Your reader fails to mention that Koufax pitched 3 games in that World Series and was the series MVP. He won 2, lost 1. His ERA was 0.38. He pitched 2 complete games, 24 innings, 29 strikeouts. Both complete games 5 and Game 7, were shutouts. In Game 7, he pitched on 2 days rest, as did Jim Cott, the Twins pitcher. In the game that he did not finish, Game 2 of the series, he was lifted for a pinch hitter in the top of the 7th. In that game, he gave up 2 runs, 1 earned. By the way, he points out, weirdly enough, Don Drysdale, who had pitched Game 1, he was the pinch hitter for Koufax. And then he also pointed out, and I think this is really funny, the time of Game 2, okay, of the 1965 World Series was 2 hours and 13 minutes, which is astounding to me. So I read that, and I thought about it, and I read other emails along the same lines, and something, I do know how to respond. It just took me a little bit of time. I actually think, one of the problems in this country is that people have crappy priorities. All Koufax did was say that on a Jewish high holy day, as a Jew, he could not pitch. Now, that seems reasonable to me. Now, I'm curious, and I'm talking to you, Mr. Koufax just showed the most heinous display of narcissism in professional sports. Would you tell your workers, your employees, no if they wanted to take Yom Kippur off? Or Christmas? Would you accuse them of a heinous display of narcissism? Now, let's put aside the fact that Koufax was the series MVP. He was right in his decision. One of the best things that I think baseball does these days is they let players go home for the birth of their children or when a parent is ill. Now, when I hear about that as a fan, I think that's a really good thing. I think better of the ball clubs. Now, listen, it's part of the collective bargaining agreement, but I'm glad that baseball conceded that point. I think better of baseball for conceding that benefit. I think it's an important thing to do. It shows a positive sense of priorities, if you will. Here's the deal. There are things that don't matter. There are things that do matter. And then there are things that matter more. And I always come back to the great line from the Robert B. Parker, the mystery novelist, who once said that baseball is the most important thing that doesn't matter. I think Koufax got it right. I think Robert B. Parker got it right. And I think this particular Morning News Beat reader who accused Koufax of a heinous display of narcissism, I think he could not be more wrong. Anyway, that's what's on my mind this morning. And as always, I want to hear what's on your mind.